What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Fang of Critias Lair of Darkness deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is an amazing control deck with just how well Lair of Darkness works with all the trap cards we're playing in this deck. This deck is also incredible to be able to play because you can summon out some amazing boss monsters like Mirror Force Dragon, which is just so cool to put on the field. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description for a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Lith, Lady of Lament. This card is a great 3 out of the deck because she helps you get to any trap card you need in this build, because she has the ability, if she's normal summon, her original attack becomes 1,000. And she also has the ability, quick effect, tribute a dark monster to reveal 3 normal trap cards in your deck, and your opponent randomly chooses one of them to set to your side of the field, and you shovel the rest back into the deck, which is a great effect to be able to use because if you have Lair of Darkness on the field, you can actually tribute your opponent's monster to use this effect, which is really insane. I then play a single copy of Alice, Lady of Lament. Alice is a really good one-of in the deck because she has the ability that when she's normal summoned, you can target a Lady of Lament monster in your graveyard and special summon it, which is a great effect to be able to get one out of the graveyard that you need. She also has the ability you can banish a trap card from your hand or graveyard to special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is tributed, or if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, then you can add a fiend monster whose combined attack and defense is 2,000 from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card, basically searching any of your Lady of Lament cards. I then play a single copy of Malice. Malice is a really good one-of. I don't summon her all that often unless I'm summoning her off of Ties of the Brethren, but she's a really interesting card for this deck to help you get your trap cards back, because she has the ability to quick effect, tribute 2 monsters, and then target one of your normal trap cards that's banished during the graveyard and set that target back to your field, but place it on the bottom of the deck when it leaves the field, which is a great effect to be able to use because it'll put one of your traps back on the field and then put it back in the deck so you can use it again later. I then play a single copy of Loris, Lady of Lament. Loris is the newest Lady of Lament and a really interesting card for this deck because she can target either 3 or 6 of your normal trap cards that's banished or in your graveyard and place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, and then you can draw 1 card for every 3 cards that you place back, which is really neat because if you get the maximum of 6, you actually get a draw 2 off this card's effect, which is really nice to be able to do. And if another monster is tributed, or if a normal trap card is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, except during the damage step, you can target a normal trap in the graveyard and set it back to your field, which is a really good effect. I then play 3 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld. Tour Guide is a really good 3-of in the deck because you can just normal summon her out to your side of the field to be able to special summon out any of your Lady of Laments to your side of the field to help you go in for some link plays and also get one of your Lady of Laments on the field, which is really nice. I then play 3 copies of Arima the Wicked Warden. This card is a great card to be able to search out your copy of Lair of Darkness, which is just a really good effect. You can discard this card to add Lair of Darkness from your deck to your hand. This card also has an on-field effect that you can tribute a dark monster to draw a card, or if you tributed a dark monster other than this card to activate this effect, you can add a dark monster with 2,000 or more defense from your deck to your hand instead, which is a great effect to be able to use on this card to be able to get you a search. I then play 2 copies of Lord of the Heavenly Prison. This card is a great boss monster for any Lair of Darkness deck because it just comes in so handy in this deck to be able to protect your back row, because it has the ability that during your main phase you can activate this effect that this turn this card becomes revealed in your hand until the end of the opponent's turn, and when this card is revealed by this effect, set cards on the field cannot be destroyed by card effects, and if a set spell or trap card is activated except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you activated this card when it was revealed, you can set a spell or trap card directly from your deck, but banish it during the end phase of the next turn. But you're usually going to activate the card that you set because you're going to set a card that you want to activate pretty much immediately with this card, while also getting a 3,000 attack point monster. You can also play with this card very tactically in this deck because you can use this card to reveal to protect your back row and never special summon it, which is really neat. I then play a single copy of Darkest Diabolos because it's a really good boss monster in the deck that's super easy to summon, because if a dark monster you control is tributed except during the damage step, you can just special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, which is a great effect. And you can also tribute a dark monster, and then your opponent places a card from their hand on either the top or the bottom of the deck, which is a great effect as well. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the Fang of Critias. The Fang of Critias is an incredible card that lets you send a trap card from your hand or field to the graveyard that is listed on a fusion monster and that can special summon itself to your side of the field by sending that trap card to the graveyard. For example, if I'm trying to summon out a copy of Mirror Force Dragon, I'll send the original Mirror Force to the graveyard off of the Fang of Critias' effect to summon out my copy of Mirror Force Dragon, which is a really interesting concept for this card, to be able to use trap cards to fusion summon monsters. I then play 3 copies of Lair of Darkness. Lair of Darkness is a really good 3-of in this deck because it has a really neat effect that all face-up monsters on the field become dark. And then once per turn, if you attribute a monster that you control to activate an effect, you contribute a dark monster to your opponent controls, even though you don't control it, which is a really cool effect on this card because you can use this card to be able to generate tokens as well for every monster attributed during the player's turn, which is really neat because if I tribute, for example, if I tribute 3 monsters during my opponent's turn, they will get 3 tokens. But if I tribute 3 monsters during my turn, I will get 3 tokens, which is really nice. And those tokens are level 3, 1000 attack and 1000 defense themed dark monsters, which can be used for link summoning, which is really neat. I then play 3 copies of Ties of the Brethren. Ties of the Brethren is a new card that I'm playing in this deck that's really nice for this build because we have so many different Ladies of Lament, because if you can get to 1 copy of your Lady of Lament, you can get to any of them with this card, because you pay 2,000 life points to target a level 4 or lower monster that you control, and for the rest of your next card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters. Also, special summon out 2 monsters from your deck with the same type, attribute, and level as that monster, but with a different name from each other, and then that monster, which is a really good effect to be able to use because you can summon out any of your Lady Laments targeted with this card and get 2 more of them on your side of the field. I then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Super Poly is so good in this deck and so important in this build to be able to use because your copy of Lair of Darkness will turn everything into a dark monster. Super Poly works extremely well in this deck because then you can use your opponent's monsters with Super Poly to make a copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, giving you a 2800 attack point boss monster, which is really insane. This card is really good in the deck to break your opponent's boards. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing just 2 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is a really good card, but with Lord of the Heavenly Prison in this deck, I feel like 2 is totally fine. This card lets you banish a normal trap card from your deck, and then set 1 card with the same name directly from your deck, and it can be activated this turn, but you can only activate 1 more trap for the rest of the turn. I then play 2 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. This card is one of the best trap cards currently in the game because it has the ability to target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field, but its effects are negated, and then you can banish a monster from both players' fields that has the same type as each other, which is a great effect to be able to use to just get rid of an opponent's monster or bring back one of their boss monsters back from the graveyard. I then play 2 copies of Ring of Destruction. Ring of Destruction is so we can summon out Destruction Dragon with the Fang of Critias. But this card is also really neat in the deck because during your opponent's turn, you get to target a face-up monster that your opponent controls whose attack is less than or equal to their life points, and then destroy that face-up monster, and if you do, take damage equal to the original attack of that monster, then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage that you took, which is a really neat effect to be able to do damage to the opponent. We then play 2 copies of the original Mirror Force. Mirror Force is so cool in this deck. I want to play 3 copies of this card in the deck because I want to summon out Mirror Force Dragon all the time in this build, but I feel like 2 is totally fine with our copies of Trap Trick and Lord of the Heavenly Prison, which can actually search this card super easy. This card is super simple. If your opponent attacks, then you can destroy every monster your opponent controls in attack position, which is a really neat effect. I then play 2 copies of Crush Card. Crush Card is insanely good in the deck because it helps us summon out our Doom Dragon from the X deck, but this card you usually don't want to activate its effect, but you can just in case you want to use its ability to be able to tribute an opponent's monster, because you can tribute a dark monster with 1000 or less attack points and your opponent takes no damage until the end of the next turn. Also, you look at your opponent's hand and all cards that they control, and if you do, destroy monsters among them with 1500 or more attack, and then your opponent can destroy up to 3 monsters with 1500 or more attack in their deck, which is an interesting effect, but there is a lot of graveyard heavy decks that want to get their monsters monsters in the graveyard, so I don't use this card all that much for its effect. I use it to summon out Doom Dragon. I then play 2 copies of Deck Devastation. Deck Devastation is a really good card because it lets us tribute a dark monster with 2,000 or more attack, and then you get to check your opponent's hand and all monsters they control and all cards that they draw until the end of the turn after this card's activation, and destroy all those monsters with 1,500 or less attack. This card can be really devastating against Sprite, and just is a really good card overall to be able to use in this deck. I then play 2 copies of Eradicator Epidemic. Eradicator Epidemic is crazy powerful against any spell or trap heavy deck because it lets you tribute a dark monster with 2,500 or more attack, and then you choose either spells or traps, and you check all spells and traps on your opponent's side of the field and your opponent's hand and all cards they draw until the end of the 3rd turn after this card resolves, and you destroy all the cards of the chosen type, which is really insane because if you activate this against a Pendulum player, you can destroy their scales mid-combo, which is really good. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. I will say also, this card is really good against Runic. So that's it for the main deck. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Mirror Force Dragon, the best Critias fusion. This card is absolutely insane. It must be special summoned with the effect of Fang of Critias using Mirror Force and cannot be special summoned by other ways. And this card has an absolutely insane effect and basically an upgraded version of Mirror Force. Then when a monster that you control is targeted for an attack or by an opponent's card effect, except during the damage step, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. Everything on their field. Spells, traps, monsters, everything. It just destroys every card on the field if your opponent targets your opponent monsters or targets them for attacks. It just destroys everything. That is insanely powerful. And then play a single copy of Destruction Dragon. Destruction Dragon has to be summoned with Ring of Destruction, and once per turn, you can target one card that your opponent controls and destroy it, and then if it's a monster card, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of that monster, which can be a lot of burn damage that you're going to do against the opponent. And then play a single copy of Doom Dragon. Doom Dragon is a really good card, and it basically has the old effect of Crush card, which is really neat, because it has the ability that this card must be summoned with Crush card and Fang of Critias, and cannot be special by other ways, and if this card is special summoned, you get to check your opponent's hand and all monsters they control and all cards they draw until the end of their 3rd turn at this card's activation, and destroy all those monsters with 1,500 or more attack, which is the old school effect of Crush card. I then play a single copy of Garuga. Garuga is a really good super poly target in the deck because it just takes 2 monsters with the same type and attribute but different names. Play a single copy of Mud Dragon. Mud Dragon is also really neat and kind of the opposite version of Garuga because it takes 2 monsters with the same attribute but different types to be able to summon this card, which is really interesting. 1 copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon because it's a really good monster to be able to summon off of Super Poly when you have your copy of Lair of Darkness on the field. 1 copy of Predaplant Dragus Tapalia because it's a really interesting card to be able to summon against any fusion deck, and we have a lot of fusion decks running around in the format right now, so this card is really neat to summon to the field as a negate. 1 copy of Access Code because it's really easy to make in this deck with all the different tokens that we're going to be generating, because you can use this card with your copy of IP Masquerade and beat Cop to actually make this card, which is really nice. I then play a single copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, Phoenix to pop spells and traps, and Cerberus to pop monsters. The Nightmare monsters are just really good in the deck. They do require 2 monsters with different names to be able to summon, which is easy to do in this deck because it's super easy to make cards in this deck have different names. For example, you can have one of your tokens on the field and a Lady of Lament on the field and link into any of these cards, which is really good. I then play a single copy of Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy because it works with everything in this deck, and it works with dark monsters in the opponent's graveyard. 1 copy of IP Masquerade to be able to make Unicorn during the opponent's turn to spin cards, and finally a single copy of Beat Cop because Beat Cop is just really good because it can you can use 2 of the tokens to make this card, which is really nice. And also, if this card is linked summoned using 2 dark monsters with different names, it gains the ability that you can tribute a monster, which can be the opponent's monster, and the target face a card on the field and you place a patrol counter on it, and you can only use the effect of it once per turn. And if a patrol counter would be destroyed, or if a card with a patrol counter on it would be destroyed by battle of a card effect, you remove the patrol counter instead, which can protect Lair of Darkness. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is really fun to be able to play because being able to summon out Mirror Force Dragon is just so cool. Being able to summon out all the Critias fusions that you can in this deck is super fun, and I really love Lair of Darkness. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and there soon come part of notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.